So, I just played Firewatch.
Hit 'em, baby!
I played Firewatch, talked privately about Firewatch, watched videos on Firewatch, played Firewatch again, and now I think I'm ready to spoil the shit out of it for the rest of you. But before I get there, here's some non-spoilery shit that was cool and not so cool. The prologue is pretty neat. It managed to make me care about Julia through seemingly insignificant text prompts. Requiring the player to select a prompt even when no other choice was available was a small detail that went a long way in keeping me engaged. This game is gorgeous. Great color choice, lighting, and low polygonal art style welcomes me in effortlessly. The character models have this oddly geometric look to them. It reminded me a bit of Carl from Up. Anything that reminds me of Up gets an A in my book. This game is indeed a walking simulator. Not much goes on aside from listening to dialogue, exploring the world, and briefly interacting with a few objects. It's definitely not for everyone, especially when the game leads you to believe new mechanics are being introduced and instead just drops them on the spot, or when you inevitably end up walking into a few invisible walls. This can be incredibly frustrating when you're crossing the entire map over and over and over again. That said, I think the navigational mechanics are enough to keep you engaged long enough for the story to really grab you. You're hiking in the mountains. It only makes sense to be using an actual map and compass to find your way, and it's fun. Before I go on here, I want to address something quickly. Firewatch is a 3 to 4 hour experience and is priced at $20. You can also pay $20 to see a movie or two that could be just as bad as you might think Firewatch is. This is an experience worth having regardless of whether you end up liking the game or not. An experience you need to undergo blind. What I'm trying to say is, if you haven't played Firewatch yet, stop watching this fucking video and give it a shot yourself. For the rest of you, let me tell you why this is an experience I won't be forgetting anytime soon. Firewatch grabbed me instantly. All I knew going in was that it was a 3 to 4 hour narrative experience, so I began my journey through the Shoshone National Forest with the intentions of completing it in one sitting. As I mentioned previously, I was quite surprised by how invested I was in the prologue. It just seemed human, more so than any game I'd played in a long time. Obviously, this can be attributed to the fact that the games I typically play attempt to insert you into radically different settings, like fantasy wonderlands or cheesy over-the-top action flicks, whereas Firewatch got real with me. Perhaps a bit too real. As I've come to meet a lot of new friends on the internet, I've begun to realize a lot about communication. It's different when your friends live on the other side of the country, or even the world for that matter. You can't touch them, you can't smell them, and sometimes you can't even see them. All you have is their voice, and when that is all that's available, I think that's what has the potential to create some of the strongest friendships. You're almost in constant communication, be it through social media, text chats, or voice calls. That's when you really get to know someone, when you really peer into their mind, and that is what Firewatch is all about. Throughout my time in Two Forks, I learned a lot about Henry and Delilah and myself as a result. You begin to acquire this understanding for their mannerisms, their vulnerabilities, how they react differently to various scenarios, and it feels like you're exploring these characters at a much deeper level than we're used to. Their relationship begins harmlessly enough as Delilah slowly pries into Henry's past, and the back and forth banter kept me company as I learned more about themselves and the surrounding area. The moment I knew I'd see this to the end in one sitting was when Henry began to respond to certain scenarios almost verbatim to my own past experiences, as if the game was taking the words right out of my mouth.
Delilah's a nice name.
No, you big dummy.
I was kidding.
And that's what a lot of Firewatch was. Not so much presenting dialogue strictly to advance the plot, but to further develop its characters, with this illusion of choice acting as a means of projecting yourself onto Henry. In the grand scheme of things, differences in dialogue choices are pretty inconsequential, as there's only one definitive ending lacking branching plotlines, respectively providing a more focused, tightly assembled experience. I fell for Delilah pretty quickly. She seemed a bit too forward at first for my liking, but I quickly grew to enjoy her company.
Can you even believe? You're gonna love it.
I definitely still cared for Julia, as the game liked to remind me, but I felt a much stronger bond with Dee. We became very close, perhaps to an unfaithful degree, our relationship ending with rejection when I asked her to come back to Boulder with me. However, in that moment, I felt oddly satisfied. A lot of people seem to have concluded that Firewatch feels rushed or lazy due to how underwhelmed they were by its ending, but I'd argue against that sentiment. About halfway through the game, the focus seemingly shifts from character building to uncovering the mystery of Two Forks when you begin to learn that you're being observed by something. It's a very powerful development. From the moment Henry found the clipboard regurgitating his and Delilah's conversations, I was on the edge of my seat. I was frightened, even jumping out of my chair when Henry was bashed in the back of the head upon discovery of the other radio. And from that moment onward, I felt this paralyzing thrill the rest of the game, as if I was truly being watched at every corner. The possibilities raced through my mind, only reinforced by the ominous, almost supernatural-like music played upon discovery of Wapiti Station. Tension only builds further as you reach the final act, putting massive amounts of stress on your relationship with Delilah.
What the hell happened to you? It's definitely not the best idea.
It wasn't me.
Reaching its climax when you discover Brian's decrepit corpse rotting in the cave behind the locked gate, questions finally begin to be answered. There's no government conspiracy or supernatural force at work. Brian died in that cave simply trying to please his father, and fearing the consequences, Ned tried to cover his tracks, dedicating the rest of his days to a life of solitude in the forest. And when it's all said and done, it's disappointing. But that's the point. It's supposed to feel underwhelming. Above all else, Firewatch is about escape. One man's withdrawal from his guilt-ridden past, a woman's flight from her fear of commitment, and another's escape from the consequences of poor judgment. It's a commentary on the mundane and somewhat harsh reality we face on a daily basis. And as someone who dives into a video game to escape my fears and anxiety for the future that lies in wait for me, the message is all too clear, only reaffirmed by its conclusion. When you finally reach Delilah's tower, you're given nothing. You're even robbed of the opportunity to see her face to face, to make this relationship something tangible. Just as quickly as she slipped into Henry's life, she fades away. And it's here that the message is translated. Nothing lasts forever, and simply running away from your problems is only a fleeting solution. It's nice to have that break to run free and find yourself, but at some point, you've got to be ready to face those obstacles just as fiercely as you left them behind. Henry is no different, and it's through his story that this powerful message is conveyed. The first thing I did upon completing Firewatch was pester my friends and peers for their experiences and interpretations of what took place, and the results were fascinating. Many were mesmerized by Delilah just like I was, while others found her annoying, deceitful, and manipulative. Whether that reflects poorly on me is up to you, but I think the fact that these characters can foster such wildly different interpretations is a testament to how strong a narrative it is. While the optimization might say otherwise, I don't think this game was rushed where it counts, as I feel the developers sought to convey a very specific message without feeling the need to pander to any given crowd. Above all, Firewatch felt real. From its plotline to its characters to its mechanics, nothing screamed, "This is a video game" to me, and yet it's an experience that could only reach its full potential as a game. Had I watched Firewatch the movie, or read Firewatch the novel, I wouldn't have been able to identify with Henry as closely as I did, or peel back the layers of these characters one at a time. Rich dialogue grabbed me, but a gripping plot coupled with an introspective message made Firewatch for me an unforgettable experience.